Hey, hello everyone, and welcome to our first podcast episode ever. My name is Jessica. I'm a yearbook representative at United Yearbook. Sarah and Lucy, would you mind introducing yourselves?
My name is Lucy, and I am a former advisor and currently assist United Yearbook with all things curriculum and some instruction ideas as well. And I'm happy to be here.
Thank you, Lucy.
My name is Sarah C. I've been a yearbook representative with United Yearbook since 2008. I have a graphic design background and also photography. I also did some Adobe software training early on in my career. My main role at United Yearbook is to help yearbook advisors and yearbook staff to turn the ideas into a printed piece.
Yes, awesome. Thank you so much, Sarah. So for our first episode, we wanted to touch on deadline season and the stress of deadlines. So I have a few questions here, and it'll be for both Lucy and Sarah. As always, any of the experiences we talk about, it's unique to, Lucy's school, for example. So just take that to heart that maybe your experience might be a little bit different from Lucy's, but we appreciate everyone's perspective here. So the thick of deadline season is stressful. I'm going to ask some questions from the perspective of an advisor. So in the thick of this crazy deadline season, how do I manage the stress of deadlines? And I'll let Lucy start off with that one.
Well, for me, in my class, I built together with my students, we built into our class pace, we built into our class expectations, we built into our class calendar, we built into the ladder, we built into actually everything we touched about the yearbook. We built our idea of deadlines. So the thing that I did with my students was encourage a respect for deadlines, and we only had really 3 major deadlines. We had the first deadline for the cover case, which included the end pages as well as the cover itself, and and that was usually in October, mid to late October. And then in January, when we got back from the winter break, it was a prototype. So we had 16 pages that were due, completely finished, so that we could see how that turned out. Now, from my perspective as a teacher, though, that was what we owed the publisher. But from my perspective as a teacher, fully 1/3 of the book needed to be finished by that first deadline, or that deadline in January. And then, so you see from January through April, we had the bulk of the book to complete. So that means that we were doing a lot, and it was often a 3-ring circus, a managed and maintained 3-ring circus. After all, when you go to the circus, if anybody does that anymore these days, you might have a lot of things going on, but everybody knows what they're doing, and everything is flowing beautifully, and everybody is beautifully entertained by all of the performers, and you get quite a bang for your buck. So in a yearbook class, when you have everybody performing the tasks that they are assigned, and everybody is working to make sure that the photographs are in, and they are working on their layouts and designs, and the teams are all working together, and the section leaders are all working together, and the editors are doing their job, and the ads are being placed, and so you know that It's a fairly well-oiled machine. It is a rough and ready kind of time, and it's an interesting phenomenon in the years that I was doing this. There is always a core group of students that rise to the top. Each of them more fully invested for whatever their personal reason is, but they want to see a good quality product. And so I really do respect that interest and that desire on the part of those students. And I make sure that everybody within any kind of leadership position follows through, and we lean on each other. And there is a respect that's built in among the entire class, all of the staff, all of the student leaders, and any of the peripheral people that are involved with the success of the yearbook as well. We had some staff members and faculty members and an administrator that were very supportive in a number of different ways, in a number of different contexts, to help make sure that, for an example, if I needed to get kids on a court during a basketball game, the AD or athletic director was very good about making sure that my kids had positions. So we all worked together to make sure that the book could be the best it could possibly be. So deadlines require that everybody knows what their job is, that everybody knows what is expected of them, that they know how to handle the software, that they know where to put things like the photographs that they're going to need, that they know how to write, that they know how to edit, that they know that they can count on the person to the right and to the left of them to help them review their work, and that they can count on their editors, that they can count on their section leaders, so that they can pull together to get the deadline done. Now, the other thing that I did with my students was I made sure that we had work days. So I would make sure that I talked to the kids about when they felt like they needed more time. Now, I ran a open lab, an open computer lab time after school, so that I was there until about 4:35. And whoever managed to stay during that time period could stay during that time period. But overall, there were times that as a group, we needed to be able to come together, and I provided with the help of others. Sometimes admin was good enough to provide funds. Sometimes families were good enough to provide food, and we shared a meal, and we had kids stay and work. So we had work nights. Sometimes it was a work Saturday, and I would make breakfast for everybody. You know, breakfast is a fairly inexpensive meal to make for kids. But in any event, we managed, and sometimes we were running at the last minute, but we managed. So like many of us, we have calls to our publisher saying, okay, what's the last possible moment that I can give you the book? Okay. And, you know, my editors and I gave up time during our spring break to make sure that the book was reviewed so that as few mistakes as possible got through. But, you know, it was an endeavor by people, so it was never a perfect product, but it was always a very fun product. So that's how I handle deadlines.
That's awesome, Lucy. You seem to have a really great support team system in place, and also your students. Wow, they're wonderful. Your student leaders, yeah, that's
a lot
awesome.
of training, a lot of developing them, taking the time to listen to them, taking the time to hear the staff and understand what their experience is like, understanding what the stress of a particular time in the school year was like, because that's an outside stressor adding pressure to their already full plates. And so you have to really be able to walk intentionally with students.
You're like taking the temperature of where they're at in the school year. That's awesome. Sarah, your experience working with so many different advisors, what would you say is kind of like the key or some of the things that you've noticed in different advisors to help them manage their stress during deadline season?
Well, I have this great opportunity working with different advisors since 2008, and I can tell you it's a very, very stressful job being an advisor, leading a group of students to not only get the publication completed, to make sure it get delivered to the school on time. Imagine if the yearbooks are late, right? So my responsibility as a yearbook rep is to walk alongside yearbook advisors from start to finish. Usually during the fall, if it's a new advisors, we will come up with the date for the submission date. The first submission date is for the cover. Usually it's due before Thanksgiving, so it's due in November. And then the second deadline, we usually ask for 16 pages as test pages. If they don't provide them, that's okay. You know, we will still check the program to make sure there's no printing issues, and we will insert our note to the program so that the advisors and the student will know ahead of time what type of potential printing error that those pages have, so that give them enough time, you know, to start making changes or fix those issues. And then the final deadline, we only have one deadline for the entire book, but we highly recommend advisors to divide multiple deadlines with the students. So our hard deadline is, it really depends on the quantity and also the type of publication. For paperback and hardcover yearbook, we mainly do hardcover yearbook, but we also have a good number of paperback yearbooks. So our delivery is from 4 weeks to 8 weeks. So it's based on the submission date, the final submission date of the entire yearbook. So probably about 1 month or even 3 weeks, 2 weeks, 1 week before the final submission deadline, that's when the intensity of the stress from meeting the deadline start compounding. So that's the time when we, as a yearbook rep and our team, want to provide the extra support to let the advisor know we do have extra extended hours during the peak season. So even on the weekend, advisor will work with us after school hours on the weekend, Saturday and Sunday, just to get pages submitted to us, and also to get for us to get approval, because we still need to get the advisors approval of the proof we provide to them before we start printing the job. So I would say the key is walk alongside with advisors, being there for them and support them. Each advisor they need is different. It could be the deadline. It could be this is the first year they need a little bit more time, but they need to have a shorter like a submission date. So we want to be able to provide that flexibility. You know, even our agreement may say, okay, 8 weeks, but if there's a need to push the deliver date early, we'll do everything we could to make it happen for the school. So so that's what makes United Yearbook different. And also my job as a yearbook rep to be able to provide a solution, you know, for the advisors. So I think the key is to be there for the advisors and also for the student leaders. I remember during the peak season, we will stay out with the student till past midnight, at our office to make sure they get the pages sent to us. But it's a big relief, for them and also for us, when we see them finish uploading the pages for the entire yearbook. So I think it's just like a celebration with the team, with the advisors, and also the students. So I am very, very fortunate to be able to see that because we have made it a commitment to deliver the yearbook correct. We make sure the yearbook are printed correctly. So that's why we have that flight checking process and also proving to make sure there's enough time for the advisor and the student leader to review the book one more time before we start doing the printing. And also to make sure we deliver the yearbooks on time. So for the past few years, I'm very, very excited to say that our on schedule delivery has been 100%. In many cases, we actually have the yearbook ready and we just store it at a facility before the school have enough room to receive yearbooks for distributions. So I think being there, being supported, and be very clear of what our role as a yearbook rep, a yearbook publisher plays during the critical deadline is so important.
That's wonderful. It makes me think of what Lucy was talking about having that support system. And that comes in many different ways. So I'm sure that that's such a relief for a yearbook advisor during a time where they're just in complete chaos. So yeah, thank you for sharing, Sarah. I wanted to go back to what you were talking about earlier, Lucy, with your students and student leadership. And I wanted to kind of get an idea of maybe a few key points on how you can keep those students on track during this hectic season, especially like you said, when there's so many things going on outside of the yearbook class. So how do you keep them focused? How do you keep them on track and motivated when chaos is ensuing in the yearbook class and outside of the yearbook class?
Well, I think intentional planning. Planning is a huge fact. And one of the best organizing features that anyone can have is the ladder. And the ladder is, of course, the skeleton of the yearbook, and details for you every page and what topic is on every page and who is responsible for every page and who is responsible for editing those pages. And so it's a hierarchy of responsibility going back to ultimately me as the advisor, making sure that these things are met. And if we have difficulties with some topic, story, subject, whatever, and we need to flip it or change it or massage it in some way, then we meet together. The student leadership will bring me problems. We meet and then we confer with each other about possible solutions, and then negotiate how to go about implementing those solutions. I think that student leadership is huge with regards to keeping the book on track. And in my opinion, they need to be trained. And so training and developing student leaders is a responsibility that I took very seriously. It is a two-way street when you are working with your student leaders. So it is a place where they can, tell you how the work is going, what they feel are the strengths of the moment, what they feel are the pressures of the moment, so that they can listen to each other and then talk things out. And I can intervene with advice if they would like. I try not to let them get too bogged down. We had a system in place, we had a timer, if at the end of the timer, it was still kind of boggy, I might present a couple of questions for them to think about so that it could move them along the path toward becoming more complete. The other thing I wanted to make sure that people understood was that the only way to get from January to April with the number of pages that you need to get done, 2/3 of the books, in other words, is to make sure that the assignments have dates. So you are grading the assignments, and they're turning in the assignments. You're reviewing this, and I had a turn-in kind of plot. The staff would finish it. They would send it to their section leader. The section leader would review it, send it back for any details that might need to be reviewed. Then once it's approved by the section leader, the editor would come in and take another look at it and complete that cycle again. And then finally it would come to me and I would review it. And then because I have control issues, I'm the one who would, and we were working in Photoshop, everybody learned how to save it as a PNG or as a PDF. And I would put those into the final book because I just have control issues anyway. So the fact is that all along the way, students are being graded for a specific task that they needed to accomplish. And some students do that very well, and some students do that on kind of on an average, and some students need a lot of assistance. And so we had peer mentorship, we had contracts for individual improvement, we had remediation, we had one-on-one instruction with me, we had a lot of different kinds of ways to uplift students. I will say that I never had a student fail yearbook. And I'm very happy about that because it speaks to me about their investment in making sure they had a good product. Not everybody got an A. And we did have, a few C's, not a lot, but a few. But we had a lot of investment on the part of our students. And part of the way that I graded my students was so that they could see their success rate. And for me, it didn't matter if you didn't make a grading deadline, you had opportunity to get that done. And once it was done, I scored them on the criteria of the assignment. I did not punish them for missing that deadline because ultimately we had one deadline in April. So as long as we had everything in place and it wasn't causing a traffic jam and it wasn't causing a catastrophe of any great nature and we couldn't, I made sure that the student received the grade that the work deserved. Because in my classroom, we practice restorative justice and we practice grace because everyone deserves that. And I also really, if their schedules were tight because of athletics or some other academic something happening, whether they were on mock trial, robotics, or what have you, and their effort was going to be C level, that's okay with me because we had those rounds of editing. So the section leader would catch something, send it back to them so that they could repair it as much as they wanted to. I mean, not everything is going to be an A layout. And that's the choice the student makes. And the other part of that is, excuse me, the other part of that is that my students wanted their names on the pages they designed. So they were totally responsible. That's what they wanted. And let me tell you that, so that meant that they were responsible for all good and for any mistakes too. And everybody knew who to go to and talk to. And so that was a reality. And but that's what they wanted because they felt that much investment. Anyway, so those are the kinds of things I had in place in order to help move students along.
I feel like you showed a great example about how students can take great ownership of their work. And you were also very respecting of who they are and them building character throughout yearbook, which I think is important because they're still so young, you know. And so
Yeah.
during the yearbook class, they're building character, they're learning life lessons, and I think that's wonderful that you're able to like walk alongside them during that process and show them grace, like you said. Yeah, so thank you, Lucy. Sarah, from your perspective, what are some things you've seen that have helped keep those students focused and on track during deadline season?
I think accountability is the key. No one succeeds alone.
Mhm.
So I often see advisor will assign the project for a group of students, like maybe one or two who are in charge of X number of pages. But there are also cases that each student is responsible for X number of pages, and there are student leaders who will be responsible to check those pages, like in Miss Lucy's, like school when she was an advisor. So there was always accountability, and I see that this plays a big part because when there's accountability, people excel. They're also able to see the area they need to change, and also having the deadline, the hard date, and also soft dates are key, so that the student if they feel stressed about deadline and they know when the date that the deadline of those pages are due, their stress is going to get them to get their job done. And some people, they operate like that. So, and I think that, yeah, as I said, accountability, support, and also practice grace, as what Lucy said, because we also have to consider students just like us. They have other academic commitment. They may even have family, personal situation, circumstances that might have affected the performance. And being able to show in every class or turning the assignment on time, for the yearbook. So I think we need advisors. I see that they have also taken consideration of their personal life, and where to give them room, to improve, to be more understanding, to be more gracious, when the advisor operate, the yearbook class. Practicing grace, I learned I have observed, how advisors, have done that. And I think when students know that they're safe to make mistakes, they're safe, to allow personal issue affect them, if they address it early enough, so that advisor and other team member can provide support to them. I think that create a much healthier, productive, and creative yearbook class environment for the students.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. It brought me to think about something that you mentioned too, Lucy, about you mentioned like peer mentorship in your classroom. And for those students that may be struggling, maybe it's something personal, or maybe they're just struggling in yearbook in general or outside of yearbook, and it's causing them to have a hard time during yearbook. For those low performers, how would you say that you would be able to walk alongside them and, help them out? Maybe they won't get to the grade that they want to, but they'll still be able to finish their page spreads and do it successfully. What advice could you give to those advisors that are really struggling with that right now?
Well, I do, and thank you for reminding me about peer mentorship. I do really like that idea when practiced well. Peer mentorship can be misused or misapplied. However, in one of the best examples I had of peer mentorship was a couple of students were having difficulty just with layout and design. They had all their notes. I had posters. I had walked with them one-on-one, but whatever was holding them back was not something that they could hear from me to get through it. And one of the editors looked at me and said, "I got this." And because I had worked with my editors and section leaders on peer mentoring and had trained them, she sat with them, and she's so laid back and she was so wonderful in her approach. And she just kind of sat behind them while she was working on other stuff. And she'd lean in and look and say, "Hey, that's a great move there." And she was just being there as a human being. And you're just really offering the kind of support that they needed to hear. Now, were those the best layouts? No, but they were adequate. And they had enough of those students' individual voices so that they would recognize themselves in the layout, and that would further their investment in the process and make them more willing to work on the other of their assignments. And so that was really pretty cool. So that was a very successful, and so I didn't always have to say, "Would you take care of this?" By the time in the spring, my leadership team, they knew who was struggling, and they probably knew it faster than I did, because they really had their fingers on the pulse of the book, and they would stand in the gap for their peers. The other thing that I really appreciated, because we had parent-teacher conferences, and if I had direct concerns, and see, in parent-teacher conferences, I would ask the student, and it was parent-teacher student conferences, I would ask the student to lead the talk, and I would prompt them maybe with a couple of questions. What do you suppose is the difficulty for you? That kind of thing. And at that meeting, if I was lucky enough to have the parents of the students who were having difficulties, at that meeting, we would talk about a contract. And so I often, for the contract and the development of the contract, would talk to the student during class about what they felt was fair in order to get this level of grade, whether it was a D, a C, something that could get them to the point where they felt like they could contribute at that level. And I'd write it up, and then I would pull them from their class, not mine, but something else. And I would talk with them in the hallway, and I said, "I feel so strongly about your success in my class. I wanted to pull you for a few minutes from another class so that you could see I really care. Here's your contract. Would you sign it? Make sure your parents sign it. And then I want it back in class tomorrow. Can you do that?" Well, and I used a little bit of BIST training with that, BIST. And that's a behavior intervention strategy. And I said, "Would you be okay making sure that you get this to your parents, even though it might be kind of a hard thing for you to do?" And inevitably, they would always say yes. And most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, I got the contract back. And most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, the kids performed up to the expectations of the contract, since they had a say in what the contract was.
I feel like sometimes students just want to be seen. And so
And
whether it be and heard. And so whether it be through like peer mentorship, or you taking the time to go up to them with that contract and showing them that you're there and that you see them, I think that just makes such a difference. Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. Thank you for talking about that, Lucy. Sarah, do you have anything you'd like to add about, those students that may be struggling during this time, or just in general?
Well, I have a couple comment. One is in response to the student contract that they have the parents to sign. I think that was a very clever idea, because when the parents sign the contract too, they will immediately be brought to notice. Okay, they better also keep their child, accountable to make sure they do the work in the yearbook class. I think, that help in a sense of accountability, providing that encouragement, the support, and accountability to the student who needed that during the critical time before the deadline. Another comment I want to make regarding the stressful time the student deal with during the deadline is, I found it food was always the best remedy. I have seen advisor, they got really, really creative in feeding their yearbook staff during the when deadline approach. One school, they literally have shelves of a snack, and two refrigerator small ones, with beverages that yearbook staff were free, to purchase them, for $1.50. So the advisor classroom was always filled with a lot of snack. And also, they have a budget, to have the student to go out to have noodle, to have boba, tea, to have a snack, to have a pizza party, a lot of bonding time. I think, food, being able to spend some time to just to eat, outside of the classroom, outside of campus, will really help alleviate, some of the stress. Guess what? When we're less stressed, when advisor were able to help the staff to de-stress, they become more productive. So I think, having a good balance of, getting the work done and also having some fun time and also being able to relax. When we're more relaxed, we're more creative. So I think, just being able to see how different advisors being so creative or coming up with ideas to help the yearbook staff during the critical time as when deadline approached.
That's so good. Who doesn't love a pizza party and bonding over a good meal? It's very important.
Yes.
I wanted to switch gears a little bit, and I wanted to talk about new advisors for a second. I know that it must be so stressful to be a new advisor dealing with deadline season. So if I were a new advisor, what might I not expect, or what kind of tips would you give me as I try to meet this deadline, this big overarching deadline?
Try to be finished with all major work at least a week before the publisher's deadline, so that you have time to go through each page. And be ready as you are approaching deadline for some changes in layouts that require filler information, because you might need filler information to offset limited photos. I mean, in the fall and in the winter, you might have more photos for a layout than you need. But for some reason in the spring, that could become problematic. Maybe even not so much for a lot of schools, but sometimes, not always, but sometimes it became a problem for my staff. And but we certainly, and those would be for the like the golf team or the track team, or those lots of off-site sports, that kind of thing. So be ready for creative ways to fill the space. So having those backup modules, that's why we did a lot of work with spotlight interviews, so that we could talk to the team members individually, take a photo, and have them talk about the year. One year we had coaches write letters to their teams, so that those were part of the page spread. And one time We had the dedicated audience, the dedicated cheer people, not the cheerleaders, but the cheer people, the dedicated supporters out there for these teams. We interviewed them and asked them what was the best time of the year. So you can do these little modules that can provide good content, but filled space too, if in case you have kind of an empty looking or not enough in the way of story as opposed to picture book. And then also I would remind the new advisor to breathe, because they're getting to the moment where they actually will have a book, and they will have a book. So just breathe, you know. So basically speaking, those are the kinds of things that I would think of. But also to plan that distribution. That distribution is your first PR for the yearbook for the next year. And it is a really telling marketing device. So that's an important project, in my opinion.
Thank you. Just breathe. I know I've talked to some yearbook advisors who are new and they weren't expecting to be a yearbook advisor. And so they were just thrown into the job and they were just like, you know, we're going to get it done. So I think that's really good advice for them to just breathe and realize that they're going to have that first yearbook under their belt. So yeah, thank you, Lucy. Sarah, do you have anything you'd like to add for those new yearbook advisors?
Sure. I'll piggyback what Lucy said. You know, breathe, but by give themselves grace, because oftentimes new advisors tend to be more harsh on themselves when they miss a deadline, or when they felt they're not living up to the standard of the previous advisors. There was always comparison. So I think it's very important. They need to be realistic. It's okay because they're new. Do not be afraid to ask for help. And remember, the job is not to do the yearbook. The job is to lead by advising the yearbook staff, to complete the yearbook. After all, yearbook is the student publications. So leading the process is critical instead of doing the work for them. So I had the opportunity to work with veteran advisor recent years, also with new advisors. And I found that the most creative yearbooks and fresh ideas, they're actually coming from new advisors, because they tend to be more willing to look for options, creative ideas, rather than continue what was already done in the previous yearbooks, based on what the school already have. So I love seeing the work from the advising of the yearbook advisors, new advisors, the creativity, the innovation, new ideas, and seeing how their students benefit from their leadership. So I think new advisors need to be reminded, delegate, let the student do the work. And then the job is to monitor the system and the process. So when advisors do that, and I found that they're not as stressful, they have more fun doing the yearbook, they can focus more on the time of what they're good at, advising and teaching.
Very nice.
It's about letting go of the reins, learning to let go of the reins.
Exactly. Yeah. And give the yearbooks and yearbook staff and the student opportunity to shine.
Yep, that's their place to shine. That's wonderful. Thank you, Sarah. So I'm getting down to my last few questions for you both. One of my last questions is, when is it a good time to ask for an extension from the yearbook publisher if I anticipate a delay in the submission schedule? So, Lucy, you were saying earlier that sometimes you have to call up the publisher and you're a little stressed out during that time. what would you say, to give yourself a good enough time and give the publisher enough time as well?
Well, the first year that I did yearbook, I didn't realize the calendar was going to be as tight as it was with our last big event, school-wide event that needed to be in the yearbook according to the administration, and the publishing date or the publisher's submission date. And I was very distressed, and because I didn't realize that until March. And the submission date was sometime in April. And the event was at the end of April. And I was like, oh my God, what in the world? And I was distraught. And I wasn't working with United Yearbook at the time. And I called to see what could be done. And it was a costly problem. And I have to say that taught me, so that I could really be far more proactive about the calendar and understanding. I didn't ask all of the right questions because I didn't know what questions to ask. I didn't know that the administration was going to have that intense desire for that particular event to be in the book. So once I got through that very difficult moment, it taught me a lot. So, the books were delayed a little bit. We didn't get them at the time that I wanted the kids to have them, but they got them in time for the seniors to have for the senior breakfast, which was hugely important, but that was very stressful. So if teachers could pay attention to the calendar, the school calendar, ask what are the important events that need to be in the yearbook that are school-wide events, get that information from admin, get that into your calendar, make sure that you are a part of the school's calendar, and just make sure that that's very smooth so that you don't have that difficulty between the submission date that is part of the contract, which I wasn't a part of. I wasn't a part of that original contract. So having said that, I learned a lot. And you learn a lot by these challenges, let's say. So, and they gave me the job again. So probably because nobody else wanted to do it, but that's okay. But if you're not ready to have some challenges, I'm not going to call them failures, because they weren't failures. They were just things that I didn't realize. Maybe I should have, but I didn't realize. But in any event, when you have those things, they make an impression. And so they really steer your ability to intentionally plan, which is very important in your book, very important.
Oh, what a lesson learned.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you made it through it and you got out stronger because of it, right?
Yes.
Sarah, from your perspective as a yearbook publisher, what would you say you would like, to hear from a yearbook advisor if they foresee like a delay in their submission schedule?
Well, things happen sometimes. Event that need to be included in the yearbook were not communicated to them, or they just came up in the last minute.
Mm.
So I'm in a total agreement with what Lucy just shared, is to be able to know the admin's calendar. So that should be shared early on at the beginning of the school year, and then we check with them again when everyone returned from the holiday in January, to make sure that the event are still what need to be included. There are no surprise, no new event that need to be included in the last minute that may potentially delay the yearbook. When that happens, the yearbook advisor need to communicate with us is ASAP. But I would say in my almost 2 decades now of being a yearbook rep, I don't usually get that last minute surprise, but I do. Usually at the beginning of the school year, advisor will let me know, okay, I have a special event that's going to take up 4 pages of the entire yearbook that will need to be submitted later. Would that be okay? Can I still have the same deliver deadline? Normally, the way that we do that, we can go ahead and finish printing the signatures that are approved, so that we would not delay the printing process. Well, we wait for the last 4 pages where the last signature fall into to finish printing the last signature, because we print based on 16 pages or 8 pages. When the last 4 pages that need to be included in the yearbook, we just put them through proving, flight checking before we do the printing. So usually last minute event are communicated to us early on in the school year, but things do happen when an advisor may be sick. They were out, for a couple of weeks. The substitute teacher were not able to continue doing the advising that they did. So they did not. They finished. They lost 2 weeks of work. So I have a situation like that, but there was a few years ago, but it has not happened in my recent years. So we want to do everything we can to still get a decent yearbook printed and finished and deliver on time. Being able to deliver a yearbook with accurate information on time is very, very important. So we want to be able to do everything we can to still to assist the advisors and still help them, to cover the critical event and still deliver the yearbook on time. One thing we have started doing is to do supplement pages insert. So that way we can still finish printing the yearbook on time, but we will print the insert as like 8 pages or 4 pages with the adhesive strip on one side. So when the yearbook are delivered, the student can simply attach the supplement pages, to the yearbook. We've done it numerous times. They look seamless. You cannot even tell they're actually supplement pages. They look like they are bound to the same yearbook. Almost, flawless, that they are actually two separate printed pieces. So I highly suggest, supplement pages. If advisors, admin knows their last minute event, they're critical, they must need to be included in the yearbook. I would suggest, doing supplement pages with an adhesive strip on the side so that the student can attach those pages back to the yearbook when they're delivered.
That's awesome. It's about finding solutions
Mhm.
for those
Exactly. Yes.
advisors.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay, my last question for both of you is, what last kernel of wisdom would you give to all yearbook advisors? So not just focusing on new, this could be veteran advisors, anyone, about this deadline season. Whoever wants to go first can go first. I'll leave it open.
Well, I would suggest that people remember why they're making a yearbook, and that the yearbook is something that will live far beyond the year that it was created for. and the memories that are grabbed from the time in which they occurred and are put in the pages of the book. They mean something. I didn't go to my 50th high school reunion, but I was what is it called? When you're online, you're a virtual. I was a virtual attendee, and we had yearbook pictures, and it was amazing to see all of those pictures and the people that were there and in the book, and what stories people remembered about the pictures from the yearbook and the stories behind the layouts, and it was fascinating. So the yearbook is more than a book, way more than a piece of history, way more than a reference book, way more than just an experience to create. It is a part of the student who is creating the book, and it is a gift to their school life. So all of their peers, all of the faculty, all of the staff, all of the administration, all of the families, all of the business community, everyone that is surrounding the school, it is a gift to them. I often joked with my students, don't forget, people are going to buy your homework, so make sure that you pay attention and make it worthwhile. So I would just say that it is a gift, and it's irreplaceable, actually.
I love that. You're so right. I love looking through my yearbooks. I had them from every year of my life, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So I love, even elementary school, I love looking through them. It's so special. Can't wait to be able to show that to anyone I encounter. Look at me when I was in elementary school, it's so special. But yeah, thank you, Lucy. That's I love the homework part. That is so funny. I love that. So maybe some yearbook advisors out there will get inspiration from that and start saying that to their students. Sarah, do you have any last piece of advice for all yearbook advisors about this season?
Sure. Advisor, we truly applaud you. Yearbook advising is not an easy job. The amount of compensation cannot justify the amount of stress and the numbers of hours that you have to incur outside of the school hours. So we applaud you. It is truly a labor of love of what you do. I want to encourage you to embrace the journey, the process, and the day when the school community receive the yearbook copy and the smiles. Make sure you capture those moments when the students are looking at the yearbook that you advise, and capture those special memories. So you have helped create a legacy for your students, for your school community. We applaud you. Thank you, advisors.
Yes, thank you, advisors, and thank you both for taking the time to do this podcast with me today. Just wanted to let anyone know who's watching, if you have any additional questions, you can go ahead and leave them below and we can respond to them below. Yeah, that closes out our first podcast, everyone. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you.